These are things we cannot. We used to sit back and think that democracy was something that we could sit back and just receive the next day, but it is not. It is under attack. We have to use our vote. We have to use our voice, and we have to be heard. What that means is, for the people who are in this crowd right now, just your one vote has to be cast, but you got to get 5 other people to vote with you. You can't show up to the polls alone. You got 5 seats in your car, all 5 need to be filled when you drive into the polls this year. It is that serious. So much is on the line. My mother was an educator, is an educator. She's retired now. I remember her coming home tired, complaining about her saying, son, that we're no longer paying attention to what's going on. We're paying attention. Now I have a message for the Republicans and none of them want to take our right to vote. You can stop the amount of early voting days, but you cannot stop the amount of early voting. The vote is how we make change. Speaking of change, this is going to be a little biased, because the person I'm about to introduce is a mentor to me and my big brother and someone I love. So I'll try to stay objective, but it's something I love him so much. Change, Teddy Reese. Right? Those words are almost like synonyms to me. Because if you look at an event like this, right, without the input of people like Teddy Reese, we wouldn't be doing things like this in Columbus. This is different for Columbus. This is a step in the right direction. I got the call from Teddy Reese about hosting this event. I can't tell him no, literally and figuratively, right? He's hard to tell him no, a very persuasive man. But this type of event, and people like Teddy Reese represent the change that we need. People like Teddy Reese, fearless leaders, ready to put their names on the line to make sure that black male voices are heard. And that is something that Columbus, Georgia should be very proud of. And I call Teddy Reese for so much advice. He calls me, he walks me through life. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of brothers here who use him for the same purposes. People like this must be protected. And in politics, the only way we can protect people is by voting. Teddy's not running for office. Voting is how Teddy got here, right? Literally and figuratively. And not just when it comes to someone casting their ballot, but actually involving the community, actually being present on the scene, meeting voters. That's how votes are won. Teddy Reese, one of my best friends, and I'll leave you with this. Teddy Reese, he represents what I like to call a new day. Right after the sun falls, right after the night passes, right after the dawn, you have what is a new day. New possibilities, new dreams, new outcomes, right? And that's something that Columbus, Georgia must be very, very proud of. Everyone, Teddy Reese. Columbus, Georgia, how we doing? Y'all make some noise! Oh man, this is absolutely beautiful. I must take the personal privilege of welcoming someone who inspires me every day, whether I'm looking at her commercials or reading her information. Leader Stacy Abrams, welcome to the greatest House district in the state of Georgia. House District 140, where we all stand right here today. We are excited to have this amazing program going on, and all of our elected officials will be recognized later, but I must pause for 1 second to say thank you to a very special state from Columbus, Georgia. State Representative Carolyn Hughley. If you will, please stand up. Please stand up. She has truly helped me, for those who want to know, really transition into understanding my role as a state representative. Get me plugged in and ready to go. I've never called her and she hadn't answered. So I want to publicly say thank you for all that you do, what you continue to do, and I'm looking forward to learning much from you when we're in Atlanta fighting for the people of Columbus, Georgia. Let's give another round of applause, guys. All my brothers that are in the room today, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We fought hard in May. It was amazing, some amazing primaries. We had people on different sides of the Democratic camps. Brothers came together on both sides, and we made our voices heard. But the primary is over. And now it's time for every last Democrat to come together. It's time for us to fight together. It's time for us to move through these neighborhoods, let them know it's time to vote. So brothers, all my men that are here for Stacy Abrams, when I call you and say, meet me on Macon Road,
Because we're going to hold signs for Stacy Abrams. We're going to hold signs for Congressman Bishop. We're going to hold signs for William Bodie. We're going to hold signs for B. Nguyen. We're going to hold signs for our other state leaders. Y'all show up and be ready to go. Man, do you hear me? Yeah. We have an obligation. Our children are dying every day. Our seniors are being ignored. You can't get a quality education if you continue to cut the budget. If you look at Leader Abrams' website, it will tell you last year alone, Brian Kemp cut $500 million from the education budget. How can our children learn if we take resources out of their mouths? How can they progress? How can you say you want a better Georgia? That's not a better Georgia. But we have someone on the way with a plan for Georgia. We got this woman on the way, and she's bold. A single lady who raised me by herself. But she said, I'm going to be determined that you be the first in our family to go to college. And that's what she did. She represents African-American women all over this state and this country who have fought to keep families together, to feed the family, to fight for the family, to take the family to church. Where grandma said, get up, let's go, we went. Stacy embodies all of that. Leader Abrams embodies all of that. And you're going to hear from her shortly. But I have the quick privilege, and I'm sitting down, of introducing a great brother. And I call him a brother because he is a brother. You look at his website, it's going to say William K. Bodie Jr. The other folks who just now learning here call him Will. But us brothers, we call him Bodie. Because that's who he is. Now, Bodie joined a different color fraternity. Mr. Broadwater. The one that shared the same year with yours. We're not going to be mad at him about that. But when I tell you that what I see in this brother is what I saw in Commissioner Michael Thurman when he was the labor commissioner for Georgia, the first black one that I saw happen. There are people out here hurting, and you see these job numbers, but they never break them down and tell you exactly how many of those numbers reflect the African American community. We have someone who's going to be our next labor commissioner, who's going to put the attention where it deserves to be. And with no further ado, I want to welcome to the stage my brother, my man, Representative William Bodie.
Thank you, Tim. Wow. It's such an honor to be here in Columbus, in Muscogee County. It is just an honor to be here. Muscogee. I'll get it right, I promise you. But this is it's just an honor to be here. Because the reason why I am on Is his door open? I can tell you no for sure. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I was on a lot of coalitions, and we were trying to get a meeting with the governor about why was he opening up the state so early, and why was the Georgia Department of Labor not paying benefits on time? And why were the doors still closed? We can never get that meeting. So I want you all to realize that in Leader Abrams, you're going to have a leader, a governor that's going to listen. But not only listen, but cares. She comes from an amazing family of two very, very powerful people that are from the faith-based community. But also she has brothers. And she's going to talk to you a little bit about her brothers. But I want to say this, Leader Abrams. Thank you for always taking my phone calls. And thank you for what you do, because I know as the next governor, black men will have an opportunity to talk about how can I start my own business and how can I get funding to do that. We will have an opportunity to have a governor who will tell us that I'm for criminal justice reform and not just putting money behind other avenues that won't actually help us in our community. And we will have a governor that will expand Medicaid in the state to get 64,000 living wage paying jobs. And we will have a governor that will create 20,000 new positions for registered apprenticeship opportunities that will help our community, not just in Metro, but across the state. And I want to end by saying this. My dad lost his job when I was a young boy. And he had to certify for 5 weeks to get his unemployment benefits. And my dad eventually got another job. But I think about my dad when I was a boy, losing his job and not having the opportunity to provide for his family. But the Labor Department and unemployment insurance benefits are an insurance benefit. It's not a handout. It is a safety net that we all pay into because we work for our employers who pay into the unemployment trust. And I remember growing up, when my dad was working the night shift, before he lost his job, he would go to work, I would give him a high five, and when he came back home from work, I would wake up in the middle of the night because he brought Waffle House with him. But when he lost his job, I knew the pain that he was going through. But luckily, we had a labor commissioner back then that cared. And so my father was able to get the financial resources that he needed. But I think about this, Leader Abrams. If Mark Butler would have been the labor commissioner then, and Brian Kemp, I don't think I'll be on this stage with you. So thank you, Leader Abrams, because I know you're going to invest in the African American community, and you're going to invest in black men, but you're going to invest in this state because you care about the state of Georgia. You have the track record, you have the wherewithal to get it done, and you have the policy initiatives that put people over profit. Thank you, Leader Abrams.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great day in Columbus, Georgia, isn't it? I am honored to be here, but let me tell you something. It's not going to be Ian Harbison show right now. I'm going to bring up the real attraction right now. But I want to tell you this. This is truly the time that try men so. This is the time that try women so. This is the time that we need to be on guard against all kind of forces, evil forces rising. And I think the person of the hour that we're going to hear from right now is just the personality. It's just the soul to do just that. My good, the next member of Georgia, my good friend, get up here. Let's hear him.
Thank you. Before we continue, I do want to take a moment of personal privilege and make certain that our congressman, who is, where'd he go? There we are. Come on, Congressman. The current and future congressman of this great second district, Congressman Stacy, Dean of the Georgia delegation.
Thank you very much. Let me just say that the main attraction is here. But she's the main attraction because not just the fact that she ran for governor 4 years ago. She is the main attraction because she did the groundwork. She did the groundwork to make it possible for us to turn Georgia blue. She did the hard work, the brain work, the legal work, the organizing work to make it happen. She came that close 4 years ago. She's going to cross the line this year. I supported her back then, before she ran, when she was leader, when she filed a lawsuit because 200,000 voters had been disenfranchised and stripped from the base, from the list. I support her now. Our next governor, Stacy.
So I'm going to talk very briefly and then do questions because I think y'all like me, but the weather doesn't. So here's what we're going to do. I want to acknowledge Jen Jordan, who is running for Attorney General, who's standing right in the back. nguyen, of course, is running for Secretary of State. And our very own Lieutenant Governor candidate, Charlie Bailey. I'm also going to acknowledge our state representatives, Shelley Hutchinson, Carolyn Hughley, and of course, Lawyer Frazier. Carolyn and I sat next to each other for 7 years, and I'm still recovering. But here's, and the chairman, I'm getting there. I told you, she's been telling me what to do for 7 years. And the chairman of the Democratic caucus in the House, Chairman Billy Mitchell. I'm running for governor because I believe in Georgia. We have a generational opportunity in this state. Usually we are told that we can't afford to do what's right, to the problems that we see. It's like living in a house where there's a constant leak in the roof every time it rains. And anytime the waters fill the basement, you just have to go down there with a bucket and bail it out. But unlike years past, for the first time in a generation, we have both the need and the opportunity to solve the problems. We live in a state that has a $5 billion surplus right now. That's after we've paid every bill for the people of Georgia. I'm running for governor because I believe that now is the time to invest in our children from cradle to career. Law enforcement and support accountability. That we can do work we need to pay our teachers, not just a living wage, but a professional wage in the state of Georgia. I'm running because we live in a state that is in the midst of the grip of gun violence. We are the 9th highest gun violence state in the nation. And gun violence is the #1 killer of our children. And I grew up in the Deep South. I know how to shoot a shotgun. But I know you can protect the Second Amendment and protect second graders at the exact same time. But I'm here tonight because I know that one of the populations in the state that has needed our attention and has gotten only the backhand of our leadership are black men in the state of Georgia. They are the most incarcerated and often the least educated, and they deserve our attention, our investment, and our voices, and that is why I'm running to be the next governor of Georgia. Very quickly, I'm gonna stop talking and take a few questions, because I know the water is gonna hit us a little hard. And while brown sugar doesn't melt, it does get a little soft. So, let's take some questions. I gotta start with men first though. I'll be right back. Here you go.
Testing. We have our host committee here. We're going to start with Attorney Ralston Jarrett.
I just want to say, I'm Attorney Ralston Jarrett, criminal defense attorney here. I just want to say thank you for coming. I know it's very, so I won't bug you with too many questions, and then I'll kind of pass it on. And thank you for coming to Columbus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oz Roberts, I know it's critical to engage our youth, our younger voters. What is the most critical thing that we can do to engage them?
People vote when they know there's something in it for them. That's just the way it works. And what young people need to understand and what they need to hear from us is that voting isn't magic, but it is medicine. And if we take the medicine, we can change the future. That is why I want to not only pay our teachers a living wage, I want our young people to understand that if they vote under our Governor Stacy Abrams, technical college will be free in the state of Georgia once again. If they vote, we will have need-based aid for the first time in the state of Georgia, so that when you go to our colleges, if you lose hope for a moment, you don't lose hope forever. I want to make certain that we are meeting the moment that we have just seen with President Biden eliminating $10,000 of school debt. We need to reduce the cost for attending our colleges, and especially for our black students who are most likely to not get hope from the beginning and to lose hope once they've got it. I'm the only candidate with a plan to actually invest in hope. I want to expand gaming in the state of Georgia to allow for sports betting and to allow for casinos so that we can create more opportunities in the state of Georgia and permanently fund issues. And then when they finish, if they want to do an apprenticeship, if they want technical college, if they go to our colleges, I want them to be able to start their own jobs when they finish. That's why we create an entrepreneur's learner's permit, so that you get the same kind of treatment that Kia and Hyundai and Rivian are getting. You should get the same kind of opportunity to start your new business, and I'm going to create a $10 million small business fund so that you can borrow the money you need to get started. But we also have to recognize that the state of Georgia does a very poor job in contracting with our businesses. And so as you grow, and if you want to grow, I'm gonna make certain that we stop this prime subterfuge where somebody gets to build a building and you get a girder, and instead do cluster contracts where young people who are working in companies have a real chance to grow and advance, because we are dividing those contracts up into 3 or 4 contracts, so you get a $200 million contract instead of getting $10,000 out of a $1 billion contract. Those are the things you can do as the next governor of Georgia, and that's how we can help our young people move forward. So we're gonna pause for a second so folks can run inside, and we'll keep going from there. So if y'all will follow the leader back there in the yellow and head inside, we'll keep talking inside.
Meet us in the main lobby between the 2 stairs, and Leader Abrams will appear from the top of the stairs, okay? So we need everybody to meet us in the main lobby, walk through, take a walk until you get to the front.
Rode your bike down here. How was the ride down here? Oh, it was good. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I saw her. Where'd she go? Yeah, I'm going in for that. She's on the air. Where's beautiful steps here. I was glad you were here. Hey, how you doing, sir? How you doing, bro? I'm glad you're here. Good to see you.
What's going on, my man? Dude.
See if I can get a picture with you.
Yep, you got one.
have providers who have had their hands tied and have difficulty actually being able to do the work they want to do. And we have an issue with getting enough providers in the state, because even if every provider currently in the state wanted to provide services and could, we still don't have enough. There is one primary solution that will solve and transform this, and that is Medicaid expansion in the state of Georgia. And the reason Medicaid expansion is so transformative is this. When you think about the Affordable Care Act, remember back in 2010 when the ACA was passed and everybody was excited, we forget what was going on. We had this huge gap where people had insurance, were doing fine, and the people had nothing and were left behind. And the goal of the ACA was to get as many people covered by insurance as possible, so you reduce the number of people who had nothing. The way they did that was creating the Affordable Care Act and creating the ACA policies that 700,000 Georgians take advantage of. So right now, we've got millions of Georgians who get insurance from their employers. We've got folks who sign up through the Affordable Care Act website, health.gov. We've got some folks who are on Medicaid or Medicare. So if you're a senior on Medicare, and for our poorest Georgians, you're on Medicaid, but Medicaid in Georgia is one of the most restricted programs in the nation. You only get Medicaid if you are disabled, if you are working poor with a dependent. If you're working for a dependent, you basically have to pay Georgia's minimum wage, which is $5.15 an hour. Or you have to be a pregnant woman. Or if you are a senior. Most seniors don't realize that it's Medicaid, not Medicare, that pays for nursing care and offers your caregivers. And so when Georgia refused to expand Medicaid, we refused the bulk of the money that was going to cover the gap. So we have 1.5 million Georgians who currently do not have access to health insurance. Now I want you to raise your hand if you paid federal taxes before. In Georgia, we have paid, yes, Calvin Booker has paid everybody's taxes. In Georgia, we have paid for Medicaid expansion for 8 years. This year alone, we were entitled to $3.5 billion. But because the governor refuses to expand Medicaid, that money went to Kentucky, it went to Indiana, it went to Louisiana, it went to California, it went to 38 other states. Georgia did not get a dime of our money. It is time for us to get what we paid for and most people hear poor people who can't afford insurance. No, Medicaid expansion is about how Georgia provides health care to everyone. Because in our state, we've already lost 3 hospitals during COVID because we won't expand Medicaid. And it's not just poor people who go into those hospitals. But Medicaid expansion is how people get preventative care. Right now, if you need mental health care in Georgia, I know they're setting it up on Fox. Right now, if you need mental health care in Georgia, if you don't have insurance or you can't come out of pocket, you have to be in crisis before you can get help. And by the time you're in crisis, they're calling the police before they're calling an ambulance. And so right now, we have law enforcement that's being forced to do a job they are not trained for, and they are spending money that could be spent on protecting us from dangerous people, not sick people. So if we expand Medicaid, here's what happens. If you make $9 an hour or less, you are qualified for Medicaid in the state of Georgia, for Medicaid expansion. That means a young person just graduated from Columbus State who gets a job that doesn't pay quite enough. They can take that job and get health insurance while they work for the next job they want. If they're going to technical college and they need health insurance while they're there, and if you need mental health care, you can get it because we will have finally enough customers to justify the expense. People don't serve here because they can't get paid here. And there's not a business in the world that can have a provider if you don't have a customer. Right now, Georgia might have 2 or 3 people who can pay. We could have 25 or 30 people who can pay. More people will come and provide those services. So Medicaid need to have a governor who actually believes that you deserve a living wage in the long run. I don't mean this rhetorically. I mean this in the sense that this man is counting jobs. He loves to talk about how low our unemployment rate is. The issue is not just how low is our unemployment rate, but how much money are you making and how many of those jobs do you have?
That's right.
We've got too many people who have multiple jobs in the state of Georgia just trying to piece together a living wage. And because they're doing so, when they get a phone call from the school board about their child not appearing in school, it's not because they're bad parents, it's because they're trying their best to keep their children alive. They can't make it to a teacher conference. We can't say that we believe in our people if we aren't willing to invest in our people. And so number one, you need a governor who wrote the action. I was as deputy city attorney for the city of Atlanta. I actually physically wrote the legislation that created a livable wage for the first time in the state of Georgia. But you know what happened to you? Why none of you know about it? We passed that law in 2003 under Shirley Franklin, and in 2004, Governor Sonny Perdue passed a law that made it illegal to demand a living wage in the state of Georgia. Governors have extraordinary power in the state. Governors can determine the future of this state. And if we have a governor who believes the future belongs to all of us, we will have living wages in this state. I believe that we should allow local governments to right-size their economies so they can generate the kind of revenue. Now, it does not make sense for Columbus or Muskogee County, Bogey here, I said it's called Muskogee County. Muskogee County may not need to have the same minimum wage and median wage and livable wage as Upson County or Copeland County or Camden County. But you should be able to decide that based on the needs of your people. The state should set a floor, it should never set a ceiling on opportunity. And that's what we have in the state. Every time opportunity comes knocking, the governors that we've had for the last 20 years have said it's knocking, but not for you. And so as governor, I want to make sure that we are creating livable wages throughout the state that are conditioned to the needs of the community. If you're down in a rural community where the living wage might be more than the mayor makes, you can't say it's the same wage you should be making in Atlanta. But we should be making certain that no matter where you are, there will be opportunities to build those jobs. This is the second part. When I talk about free technical college, when Charlie Bailey as my lieutenant governor, we were going to be able to push for those opportunities for everyone. And that means making sure that we've got apprenticeships that by the time the student is done, they are making $75,000 a year in rural Georgia and middle Georgia. The labor commissioner, it's not just about making sure that we are paying your unemployment benefits on time, it's making sure that we have a skilled workforce everywhere in the state. Today there was a little graphic that the current governor put out where he counts the jobs, both real and fake, that he's bringing to Georgia. And if you look at where the little pins are, they're not in Southwest Georgia. They're not in the pockets that have been impoverished for so long that we're supposed to forget that they deserve opportunity. As governor, I am running for, and you guys have the time for you to hold up when I say it. I'm running to be one Georgia. So everybody is our
Gerald Riley, Overflow Salon and Barbershop. You mentioned earlier that the #1 killer of black men in Georgia is gun violence. Governor Brian Kemp signed the law, the Constitutional Carry Act, in April of 2022. If elected, will you reverse that act?
Absolutely. The easy answer is yes, but let's make sure we understand what's happening here. We live in a state that for the last 10 years has weakened gun laws in response to rising gun violence. Gun violence increased before Joe Biden got in office. It increased while Donald Trump was president and when Brian Kemp became the governor of our state. We are number 9 for gun violence in this country. But what happened with I refuse to use his 2 C's, I call it criminal carry. Because what he did was say that dangerous people could carry weapons without a background check, without a permit. Now I've got a younger brother who carries one of those weapons. That constitutional carry permit, the system that he has created that eliminates that concealed carry permit, puts his life in danger. Because if somebody pulls my brother over, if he can't show that piece of paper, they may presume that he doesn't have the right to that weapon. And we have to do work to make sure that doesn't happen. But we also know that we were taught trust but verify. Everybody will say they're law-abiding and everyone is law-abiding until they commit a crime. And so this notion that everyone should have access to these weapons makes no sense. We have the responsibility to not only reverse that law, but we need to repeal the law that created the opportunity for guns everywhere. The fact that you can have guns in public schools, I see Pat people back there. We should not have guns in our public schools. We should not have guns in our churches and in our grocery stores and in our parks. We can have guns everywhere but the state capitol. And so we not only have to reverse those laws, we have to strengthen background checks. I don't want to take anyone's guns. I just want to make sure that the people with those guns understand they are responsible for the lives around them. That's not too much to ask of any governor or any leader in the state.
I have a question. In 2019, I made a hit out of the town. And 2020, the pandemic came. I wrote the governor in 2019, I wrote in 2020. And I explained to him, I said, the tornado hit us, and then but we didn't get no help from the federal, very little from the state, because we are little money. And the hit said they got all this money. So when is it going to trickle down to us? When are we going to get help? And that's when I just support you from the start. I supported you last time. I believe in what you stand for. That's the reason I ran to be a past commission. Well, maybe they'll listen to me.
So let's be clear, trickle-down policies never work. It never works waiting for opportunity to trickle down. I believe in rising up. We need to flood the zone with opportunity and let people. I was just down in Camden County. I need for help for years. You go to Brunswick has 17 industrial sites, 4 Superfund sites. And their communities have been begging for help. I was in McIntyre, Georgia, where they were begging for a sewer system for 30 years. And it took Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff to get federal money to finally give them a sewer system. The Congressman Bishop did to get that money to the state of Georgia. But here's the thing. We need a governor who sees every part of this state, who understands what it means to be a small county, because you're not too small for us to care about you. And we don't need to have every county be a place where everyone wants to live, but everyone who lives there deserves to live well when they're there. And that should be the responsibility. Georgia has the money. What we don't have is the leadership. And that has been our problem for the last 20 years. We've had some governors who've been better than others, but ultimately every single one of them has ignored the real opportunity to invest and to lift everyone as we rise. My intention is going to be to make certain that the $450 million that's currently sitting unused in Governor Brian Kemp's Department of Community Employment, that money actually gets into people's hands so they're not living under bridges instead of under roofs. I plan to work on the fact that we have a rising veteran homelessness problem in the state of Georgia that he is ignoring. That we have a housing crisis that could be solved, and we have a governor who cares enough about the people who live in those houses as much as he cares about the people who build the houses. That's the kind of leadership we need in the state, and I can pledge you out there to pay attention.
My name is Wayne Gale, I'm the president of the Public Relations NAACP. What is your plan for gaming in Georgia, and what does that mean for Columbus students, small businesses, and economic development?
So the question is, what is my plan for gaming in Georgia? What will it mean for students, businesses, and economic development? So, I don't know if you guys know this, but we already gamble in Georgia. It's called a lottery. And so the sudden discovery of moral high ground on gaming to me makes no sense. What I understand is that right now, Georgia has $1 billion sitting unused in our lottery reserve fund. This is the lottery reserve unrestricted fund. This is not the money that we put in place to shore against any kind of calamity like the one we had in 2011 when we nearly lost the scholarship. This is unrestricted money. And that means we can use it right now to pay for free technical college, to pay for need-based aid, to pay for universal prepaid that's truly universal. We need those things because part of economic development is people have the ability to have their children go somewhere so they can go to work. And if we create truly universal pre-K, and if we create those opportunities for education, that's the start. But I don't want us to ever find ourselves in the same situation we were in 2011. In 2011, I was proud to work with the Democratic caucus and with the Republican governor to save the Hope Scholarship. But now that it's saved, it's time to expand hope. You should be able to have a C average and still see your way to college in the state of Georgia. And the best way to create the funding that we need that is permanent and ongoing is to allow sports betting in the state of Georgia and create casinos in the state of Georgia. For sports betting, it only requires a simple majority in the House and the Senate. But what I want to do is make sure we have a constitutional amendment that permanently dedicates the funds for the needs of education. Because the problem is, if you don't write it down, it's not going to get done. Then I want to create at least 3 casino licenses and actually have a fair bidding process on those licenses. We should know who's getting the licenses before the ink is dry on the legislation. And that means having a public bidding process where we make certain that communities begin to actually understand what it means to have a casino where they live, that they can have project labor agreements to make sure that the construction contracts go to the communities that are there, that we have fair allocation of purchasing contracts so that the communities look like the communities who are going to benefit. Because the worst case scenario is that we finally have economic development, but it doesn't reach a single person who actually needs it. One of the challenges of the lottery is that the lottery is disproportionately used by people of color, especially by black voters, and by black folks, and they're the least likely to benefit from the scholarships that are created. We will not have that happen because my intention is that we have equity in the state of Georgia from the very beginning to the very end.
I have 1,000 questions, but I'm going to ask
The election is November.
I'm only going to do one, but I am so proud to hear you say you care about the veterans. That means a lot. I don't say if you get elected. I said when you get elected. Will you consider having a military liaison to help you with those homeless veterans in your cabinet? We have soldiers right here in Muskogee County on active duty that are receiving public assistance. And no one wants to talk about that issue. To me, that's a tragedy and a travesty. Because when you are able to give your life for our freedom at any moment, and you have to be on public assistance, I think that's a call for our highest political, our highest public officials to address it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm looking around for Representative Harbison. Step forward. So this is Senator Harbison. I'm sorry for promoting you. But I was leader in the House for a long time, but I want to call Senator Harbison forward because he has been a leading voice on this issue. And when I was the leader in the House, working with Representative Gloria Fraser and with Carol Hughley, we passed a raft of legislation called a Promise Pact. Our commitment was to help investment, and that was looking at everything from making sure that they can get the records for kids transferred, the kids can get the education they need, and looking at all the benefits, making sure we accelerated their ability to get the license taken, but we couldn't get all the legislation through Republicans who are happy to wave the flag, but were refusing to pass the legislation to make it possible. So not only will I guarantee that we will have a liaison, I'm going to have Senator Harbison beside me, I'm going to have Representative Carol Fraser behind me, Representative Carol Hughley, and Representative Gloria Fraser beside me. But more than that, what I'm going to do, I'm the only candidate that runs who's ever gone through the grant process. I was the lawyer in charge of the basically writing the closure process that dealt with Fort Gillum and dealt with Fort McHugh. So unlike the current person sitting in that office, I actually know what the process looks like. And I intend to make sure that we don't need a single installation in the state of Georgia as they restart back. But that means that we think about investments from the moment they serve to the moment they retire and every day in between.
ways to address poverty in our schools? What are ways that we can prevent people in high school, middle school, from falling into gangs and vicious cycles of violence?
First of all, thank you for that question, and thank you for the work you're doing through this. In 2017, I actually crossed the aisle with our colleagues, and we worked on legislation called Priority Schools legislation. That legislation, for the first time, made it the law of Georgia that if you were going to tackle a school that had high rates of poverty, high rates of, or low rates of achievement, that you actually had to assess the children in that school. That we had to have assessments of, can they read? Can they see the chalkboard? Have they had their hearing checked? Can they eat when they go home? Do they only have a meal when they show up in the school? We had to look at wraparound services. Shockingly, in 2019, the current governor basically defunded the program and stopped looking at it. And I know that if we restore the priority school program, we can target schools where we know that high deprivation is likely to lead to high crime in their communities and in the schools. And so my first responsibility is going to be to make certain we use that tool immediately. But we also have to adequately fund our schools based on the real needs of our children. We are using a funding formula that was passed in 1985 before you were, I think, a glimmer and something high. We have a funding formula that was based on Atari being the highest amount of technology we had in the country. And every 4 years, we hear governors say, well, we need to reassess it. I was there the last time it happened. It happened after the 2014 election. And right now, the same people are meeting in the same closed spaces, trying to figure out what do we need to do. We need to put more money into our schools for those children who need more help. And I'm the only candidate who intends to invest those dollars. But here's some specific things that we can do. We can make certain that we shift from having one counselor for every 452 students in the state of Florida. One for every 250. And right now, some of those counselors are moving across 3, 5, 7 school districts, serving all the children in those districts. Number 2, we can make certain that their families have access to mental health support. Because if you are helping the child in the school, but they go into a broken place, or broken people, they will not be able to sustain. So we need to take care of the whole child and the whole family. Number 3, we need to teach the escalation in our schools. One of the things that is causing the rampant violence is that we have desensitized children. And I don't like that phrase, let me restate it. It's not that they're desensitized, they are in despair. When you have been taught by your society that you don't matter, why would you think anyone else's life matters? And so we've got to do a better job of making sure that our children have the tools they need to respond to crisis, to respond to anxiety, to respond to concerns. And if we can help them deal with that in school, then we can lessen the likelihood that they become criminals. The last thing we have to do, this is why William Bodie is going to make an incredible labor commissioner, is our solution cannot be locking every child up. We are very quickly moving back toward mass incarceration in Georgia under the guise of gang task force. I want to stop gangs like as much as anyone, and I know that Jen Jordan understands this, and she will be an amazing leader as our Attorney General, but she's not going to criminalize our children simply because they come from less fortunate circumstances. Unlike the current governor and the current AG who believe that the only answer is to lock them up. If we start there and if we decriminalize being poor in the state of Georgia, we can have stronger children who become more resilient adults.
This is going to be our last question, because a quick question, because we know that we appreciate the presence, we have a busy schedule. But I want to first thank the Civic Centr staff, our director, Rob Landers, and Jeremy Apples and his team for doing an amazing job. And I also want to recognize our amazing city manager, Mr. Dr. Isaiah Healy, for all that he did for us here in Columbus, Georgia. Thank you so much. Real quick,
You can't have another question. Okay. Oh, before I do that though, is there anyone else who has a question before we? I'm gonna do yours, but I just want to make sure somebody else gets a chance to. And you better not ask me any embarrassing questions.
I think it might be good.
Ask me anything you want.
Okay. So I'm coming from Coffee County, Turner County, Earl County, and running for state district
169. So the thing is that we are willing to fight with you. We are willing to be on the ground. But we have people that we are knocking on doors. We have people who are intimidated by voter fraud. We have commissioner that is down there who was arrested by voter fraud. So what we see,
Voter fraud or voter suppression?
voter suppression, they tried to get her for voter fraud and was dismissed. So what happened was we are seeing intimidation tactics that has been carried on through South Georgia for a long period of time. Me working as NAACP coordinator for the state, I've seen so many different things happen on the ground, police brutality, all this kind of stuff. So the thing is that what can we do as running officials, because we have to be politically correct, what can we do to march on but still fight the good fight on the ground?
Okay, first thing we can do is make sure that folks know, make put our hand up, that B. Nguyen becomes the next Secretary of State for the great state of the world. So, I have a little bit of experience with voter suppression in the state of Georgia. And part of our campaign is designed to be not only a partner to you, but to help you get connected to the resources you need. Ryan is the person from this region. He is our regional field coordinator. And what he can do, he'll make sure you two connect. Because we know that voter suppression often tries to convince the voter that they're at fault. We have right now unlimited challenges. Anybody can take a list of voters and claim that you don't have the right to vote. You get this ominous letter in the mail that makes you think that your right to vote has been taken away. There's an actual process that has to be followed. But a lot of our counties aren't following those processes. And a lot of our people don't know there is a process. But when you hear something, when you see something, say something. Ryan is the person. His email address is ryan@abramsforgeorgia.com. Am I getting that right? Thank you. Ryan@abramsforgeorgia.com. Let him know what you see. We can help you. We're raising a little bit of money, in part because we want to protect the right to vote in the state of Georgia. And we know that if we do not protect the right to vote, I'm going to campaign across the state. Billy Mitchell is going to guarantee that I get every voter in DeKalb County. Shelley Hutchinson is out there getting all the votes I need. But what I know is that if we lift up the voices in Southwest Georgia, I not only win, but we have our dean going back to Congress with one of the best margins he's ever had. We have Charlie Bailey as our next lieutenant governor. We have Jen Jordan as our attorney general. We have William Bodie as our labor commissioner. We need your voices and we need your votes. As Louis pointed out, if you tell us what you see, if you talk about your votes, we will make sure your voice gets heard. Make sure you talk to Ryan and get it done, okay?
Or with going social security. This is a question that I have. The crisis stabilization usually compromises maybe 7 days and a prescription for 5 days, and then they don't even have a way to get prescriptions filled. Outside of that, when we say Medicaid and Medicare, does that extend to the possibility of more long-term facilities in the area?
Yes. Okay, so that's a very good question. So one of the issues right now, because we only have we basically have some of the least helpful Medicaid in the nation. When you need help, you have to be in crisis before you can get help. And when they say crisis, they mean that they're going to give you support. And it's not because they don't want to do better. Most of the crisis care providers know they need more time, know they need more resources. But they don't have the resources to do it. Medicaid expansion is how we draw down those dollars, but it's also how we can start to finance resources, finance clinics, finance more beds. All of those things come with money. Because let me get very clear. I'm not talking about $3.5 billion as a one-time infusion. That is every single year. Every year we will get a minimum of $3.5 billion. And as our population grows, we will get the resources we need. But hopefully, with me as the governor, we're going to make people so strong and so resilient, and we're going to have such wealth pouring into Georgia. We won't need as much as we need now, but we will have the right to have it. And that is why I need every one of you to say it with me like Lula said. Our vote, our voice, our voice, our voice, our vote, our voice, our voice, our voice. One Georgia, one Georgia, one Georgia, one Georgia, one Georgia, one Georgia. And let's get it done. Thank you so much.
You guys, let's take
Awesome, awesome. Get yourself a treat. You want, see if you at the table? You want one? You want one? This is, I don't know if they have banana pudding.